And we're live, guys. Happy Sunday. No footy today, sadly. We had an interesting round of NRL elimination finals. Absolute cracker last night. I thought I'd just jump on Sunday morning. If people have time today, they can catch the recap anytime they like. If they come along at 6 p.m. this evening for the recap, it'll already be up. So just kind of springing this one on you guys. It'll also be available as audio. As always, let me know your comments and your thoughts, especially last night. Lots of talking points. Give me a few seconds. I'm going to try and start at the 1 minute mark. I'm just going to try and get this video set up and shared into the tripod group, and then we'll get away. I'm going to try and start at the 1 minute. Welcome to the tripod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn. This is the NRL Week 2 Finals live recap. I'm jumping on Sunday morning, nice and early. Didn't want to do the recap straight after the game last night. It was getting a bit late. I just wanted a little bit of time to think about and digest everything that I saw. Two, polar opposite performances or matches. Friday night, no contest, and then last night, like an all-time classic, really. And I actually want to start just by talking about the result last night between the Panthers and the Eels, and we'll just talk about what I saw in these games, particularly the one last night, because I don't think you learn as much from a blowout, and as well as the results. So in terms of the results, I didn't have a best bet. In the end, that was a wise decision. I had about 2 plays on each of the games that I was close to sharing as a best bet that I liked. Those would have gone 2-2, kind of had the right read on the Manly game, and then I thought Penrith would win more comfortably. So it was probably right to keep the discipline, feel those lines were getting a bit high, understanding finals games can be closer, leaving them alone. But we still won the mixed matchup, $3.50 for neither the Roosters nor the Eels to win a half of footy. And I'm going to put up a recent run of results of the mixed matchups here. I just want us to spend a moment just to marvel at the mixed matchups. So there we are. So this is results since round 7, just what I can fit on the screen, but it's worth noting in the first 6 rounds this season, we only won 2 of the first 6. But as you can see there, since then, it's just been unbelievable. We've won 19 of 28 of these. You look at, I'd have tried to just with my finger highlight the odds. I mean, to win that number of bets that we have at those odds, these are never below $2. It is quite astounding. And I think the big lesson, and so I just ask you guys to hit like for the mixed matchup if you've appreciated it, if you've been making any money off this season, because I don't know how many more we're going to be able to get, if at all. But I'll try my best to always try and find value for you guys. But I think what we really learned this round is it's all about bet selection as much as it is about being able to predict how a game is going to go. And I won a $3.50 tip that involved both matches, and yet I didn't get both matches right. I was, wrong. I didn't think the Eels could get as close to Penrith as they did. And as we all know, Eels could have won that game. But it goes to show if you can find the right market, it gives you a chance. I mean, you look at, I invited Mateus, the pod slayer, on, and he gave a big breakdown and also really liked Penrith. And that didn't turn out to be the case, but he still went 1-1 on his tips because one of his best bets was Parramatta's team total under 14.5. So it goes to show something that I hope you guys have learnt over this season following me. It's more than just trying to get a read on the game. It's also about trying to select the optimal market. And it's easy in hindsight to say the way you should have played it, but I just love the fact that pretty much the only way you could have got on Penrith last night and won was the way we did, really, with taking Parramatta to win neither half. It was 8-6 at halftime, and it remained 8-6. We had a 0 all second half. That was a tie, and that was good enough for us to cash a mixed matchup. And as I said, we've cashed many of them this season, so it's been pretty unreal. So I want to start with that game. People say low-scoring games are boring. We had this whole, era with the Volandis taking over where they've made all these rule changes, a lot of them angling to try and get more open and more high-scoring games. It doesn't necessarily make the footy more exciting. Sometimes a game where neither team can blow the other out and keeps it close, it just means that every moment matters and just adds to the tension. And that's what this game was. I thought this was like Origin level intensity, and take my hat off to Parramatta for the performance they put out there. Because I think I referenced in the preview on Wednesday, This team was absolutely dead and buried, and everybody was at the funeral and everybody was shoveling dirt onto their grave when they had 56 put on them by Manly about 5 weeks ago. You look at what Parramatta's done then, I think they've covered every game against the spread apart from the game where they sat at all their starters. It's been commendable, although they obviously fall agonisingly short. Now, before this game even kicked off, the line dropped about a point. Brian To'o was scratched, his ankle still not right. It's an interesting one. He came back early from ankle surgery. He played the house down in round 25. Yes, it was against a B team, but he still had like 300 metres and a hat trick. And then I did note that one of the things I noticed in that Penrith loss to South was To'o didn't look right. He didn't look like he had that spring in his step. And I didn't know if it was because South's targeted him, but I think now we understand he was hampered in that game. And we still don't know, although I would guess that To'o will brave it and play next week. And they will need him. But I will say Naden was a good addition to the Panthers. They went with Naden over Charlie Staines, that big body. This was such a physical contest that the big, strong players really stood up. And another guy I thought made a massive difference for Penrith when he came on was Pangai Jr. I think that without him, I don't know if they even win this game. Like just having that pure power athlete to add to this team, maybe especially because Spencer Leniu is out, because the Eels forwards, particularly the Eels middles, just served it up to Penrith all night. And Penrith had to give as good as they got. And that's what made this contest so awesome. They talk about in finals matches having that softening up period or that initial physicality before the game kind of opens up. This was like the whole game was like the first 15, 20 minutes in terms of physicality. Just the sting never went out of the match. And yeah, I found it absolutely enthralling. The opening try was actually a bit of luck involved, but a deadly bomb by Mitchell Moses comes down with snow on it, and Edwards can't handle it, and straight into the lap of Wonga Blake. He puts the Eels in front 6-0. I wonder if anybody else can remember this, but a year ago, and this exact part of the season, the second week of the finals, the Eels played the Storm, and Alex and I actually shared 100-1 multi. I think it involved a couple of the AFL legs that were on the same weekend. It involved whatever the Friday night footy finals match was that won. And then we got a bit cheeky. It was 100-1, but one of the legs was a 20-1 leg, which was Wonga Blake first try. And we didn't just pick it for no reason. We thought the Eels could be competitive against the Storm. I'm going back a year ago in that second week elimination finals match. The Eels were playing the Bunnies, in the second week elimination finals match. And then I think they lost their winger, and we knew that Wonga Blake was going to get shifted onto the wing. So we thought we'll take over 20-1 on Wonga Blake playing on the wing. And then the day of the game a year ago, Michael Jennings gets scratched. We haven't seen him since in the NRL with the performance-enhancing charges or whatever. Obviously, he's serving suspension for that. And I just remember that we actually nearly hit 100-1 that nobody talks about because there was a bomb early in the game, Wonga Blake contesting it. He was oh so close to catching it, didn't quite get there. And I just thought there's some sort of sick irony that a year later, when we're on Penrith, Wonga Blake scores off a bomb first try. That got Penrith in front. That got Parramatta in front. Penrith answered, again scoring off a kick. Deft little touch by Cleary again, beautiful kick. That was their response, and we're at 6-6. And again, it's just a pure arm wrestle game. And from the context of any pod followers, we needed Penrith to not lose the first half. So at 6-6, I'm thinking that's fine. If it's 6-6 at the break, that's okay. But it was a nervous period. I thought this was a critical period in the game. We'll talk about everything that happened in the second half, but I thought there was about a 10-minute period towards the end of the first half where Parramatta had all the ball, repeat sets, banging the door down on Penrith's line. And this is the part that I have to give a lot of credit to Penrith over. They've been dominant. They've won a lot of footy games over the last 2 years. And when they're on, when they're hot, when they're clicking, the attack's amazing. But let's also understand, Penrith's actually been, Storm has been so good in the last couple of months that statistically maybe the Storm's overtaken them. But for argument's sake, Penrith's basically had the best defense in the comp for 2 years, conceding less than 12 points a game. And that was on display yesterday because they had to defend their line and they were under siege. And I just saw the Parramatta giving the ball to RCG, to Paulo, Niokore, Papali'i. These guys are like battering rams, and it just seemed like a sledgehammer, just trying to bang a door down. And to Penrith's credit, they held firm. They did not concede. They only try they let in all night was off that bomb. They held Parramatta out. In the end, they actually got a penalty with a minute to go in the half to get in front. So some people may have played Penrith to win the first half. We only needed it to be a tie, but that ends up being the points that actually is the margin of victory in the end. Not that we would have known that at half time. So I think soaking up all that pressure was really impressive and really important for the Panthers. Second half, it was kind of the opposite. It was Penrith with all the ball, all the opportunity, and it was Parramatta that was unbelievably resistant. You had to feel that Penrith was going to crack them at some point. And this is where, as we try and learn from this game, and as we try and think about whether Penrith's got any chance next week when they play a whole new level of team, is how much of this was awesome defense by Parramatta and how much of this was Penrith just not having their mojo in attack. And I do definitely know from what I saw last night, in my opinion, it was outstanding defense by Parramatta. So I think a lot of that was the style of the game and the fact that Parramatta defended unreal. You've got to remember, too, that Parramatta held the Storm to 10 points, only a few weeks ago. And I tell you, the Storm wanted to win that game too. So the truth is that it was outstanding defense by the Eels, but certainly Penrith have not looked quite themselves in attack. And I mean, I'm looking at their team and you just wonder, is Cleary, carrying a significant shoulder injury that's hampering him? I noticed he's a really brave and tough competitor, but I saw him wincing out of a couple of tackles after putting his body on the line. Of course, they missed To'o a little bit as well. But Penrith just couldn't crack the Eels. There was one moment where Penrith did score, but rightfully so, the bunker reviewed it and caught an offside there, and I don't know if the grounding would have been legit. But even if Penrith would have scored that try, that was off a midfield bomb by Cleary. So once again, Penrith never really got a legit line break for a scoring opportunity. There was one in the first half where Coruscant diced them open but couldn't put the ball on Cleary's chest. But Penrith's attack definitely leaving something to be desired, and we all can agree that if Penrith's any chance next week against the Storm, the attack is going to have to be so much better, so much sharper, and you'd be right for maybe questioning whether the Panthers have got it in them. The other big takeaway from this game, of course, just the pure brutality of it and the fact that they bashed each other and the pure physical toll is the other huge question mark. Is whoever was going to emerge from this game, it's like fighting 12 rounds of a heavyweight battle, but then you've got to beat somebody even better a week later who's been resting. So that's obviously the huge concern. You guys can comment if you know, because I saw Kickow went off limping and I don't think he came back on, and I actually haven't heard in the wash up what the Kickow injury was. That could be very significant. I mentioned Nathan Cleary, wincing. And Edwards, how many runs did he have? His fitness, he really boosted this side. Again, another player who I don't think Penrith wins the game without the input that they got from Dylan Edwards. But man, he got bashed all night, and to his credit, he copped it. Obviously, we'll see if To'o comes back. Mitch Kenny, battered and bruised. This was an amazing arm wrestle game, amazing kicking duel for field position between Cleary and Moses. And neither of them really put much of a foot wrong all night. And that's just what made the contest so enthralling. Other key elements of this game, I think we have to talk about in one aspect that, it wasn't hard to predict, but this was a key aspect. You talk about the advantage that Penrith had in a rep hooker of Api Coruscant versus the Eels with their third string hooker of Ray Stone. And, I feel a bit bad for him, but Ray Stone had some terrible errors in this game, multiple errors, either drop ball in a tackle or just errors from dummy half that actually killed Parramatta in certain moments where Para could have maybe wrestled the momentum or were building pressure, and that pressure was relieved or invited Penrith back in on the back of Ray Stone's errors. And even that final error by Junior Paulo on the try line in that final minute where there's a mountain of fatigue in the game and Para's obviously going to throw the kitchen sink. Paulo spills it, but it's a no-look pass by Stone. Paulo had the hit up one previous. He's not looking for the ball there. So that's just unfortunate. And, I don't want to single out a guy. I'm sure he feels bad enough about it, but that was a shortcoming of Parramatta. I can't say much less about them. A lot of people are going to say Parramatta was robbed. So let's talk about, I was definitely cheering for Penrith. And as I said, the mixed matchup won with that final score being 0-0 in the second half, and that was good enough for us. We didn't need to win the half. We just needed to not lose it. I certainly didn't think Penrith got dudded by any calls. So I think the fact that it was so tight and I was happy with the refereeing, I think in truth shows the rub of the green was with Penrith. I think there were a few 50 calls and Parramatta didn't get many of them. Maybe that late one where Coruscant was called knocked on and they challenged it, and you could maybe argue, I think Stone had his hand on the ball, but I was happy that was a loose carry. I think that was a fair call. Matty O'Keefe commenting that Kickow had a rolled ankle, but, they often can strap and get back out there if it's not serious. So that would be a huge loss to Penrith. But you guys comment, why else do people think that Parramatta were robbed? There was that line break with about 7 or 8 minutes to go after Parramatta had soaked up all that pressure on their line. They made a breakaway down the right wing. Blake Ferguson, he kicks through. I think it's Penasini is the first one leading the charge, and he did get tugged back. So, that was a huge moment because Penrith landed on the ball and it all happened so frantic, helter-skelter. There was no time for review. There was no call. It was just Penrith taking it off their line. And then they looked back at the replay and said, that should have been penalty Parramatta. Maybe you get to 8-8, or maybe you suddenly you're under even more pressure with a penalty and a set of 6 on the Penrith goal line. So, that call there, people were complaining about the interchange, but I looked into that. People saw Pangai Jr. come on with a free interchange late and thought it was related to the trainer stopping play with Kenny. It was actually a free interchange that he had himself that they took advantage of because Pangai Jr. was hit with contact. That was reported. So that was actually all legit. I think Penrith even had further interchanges left. So there was a non-story there, no controversy there. But on that note of the trainer stopping play with Kenny, I do think the NRL needs to look at that because that was about second or third tackle, Parramatta knocking on the door again late in the game. And it's a player going down with an ankle injury 20 metres behind play, and the trainer calls for the game to be stopped. I would be filthy if I was Parramatta in that, that halted all momentum. Penrith gets a breather. Penrith gets to reorganise, and that makes a big difference. And there were multiple stoppages, and I think Brad Arthur was pretty disappointed about that. One thing I will say to Parramatta fans who I know will be hurting right now, and I know I can't really make you feel any better, this won't count for much, but this is the same message I would say to Titans fans who also lost brutally. They lost a little bit differently, but we all know how that Titans-Roosters game ended. There's something to be said for your team ending their season on a performance to be proud of. The truth of the matter is you can say, look, I'm proud of my footy team. We easily could have won that. Maybe we should have won that, but we poured it all out there. In some ways, I know you're not going to think this, in some ways that could be more positive for the club than if they score. I know it would have been a famous victory, but the fact of the matter is if the Titans had beaten the Roosters last week, they would have got flogged by Manly yesterday or Friday night. And if Parramatta had beaten the Panthers last night, they'd be in line to get 30 or 40 put on them next week by the Storm. I think that's just the truth of the matter. I think there's actually some positivity in you go out on your shield, but you go out valiantly rather than and let Penrith, who actually has a little bit of a better chance than Parramatta, we all agree, but let them go and take another dose of 80 minutes of punishment next week. So maybe that's a positive for the Eels. Let me know your thoughts. I'm going to go super quick on the Manly Roosters game because this was a game that, did go as I expected. Manly just way too good. The polar opposite of Manly's performance to the Storm, where they fell behind early and never really had a hope. Well, in this one, Manly got out in front early and never looked back. This was a real reminder to everybody of how good Manly are when they're not playing against the Storm. And Van Cruz has commented, nobody's beating the Storm. And I was going to say my other global point from this weekend, the biggest winner from this weekend was the Melbourne Storm. We watched the Storm beat Manly by 30, and then the next time we saw Manly win by 30 to just remind everyone how good the Storm are. And then we saw the two teams that were vying to be the Storm's opponent play on Saturday night, play the ultimate slugfest. So you couldn't be any happier if you're a Storm fan, the way that it's washed up, especially if Kickow is injured and a couple of other key Panthers players that I've referred to are hurt. I can't help but mention this. Didn't it look like the Roosters kind of ran out of petrol? And didn't I say the smartest thing for the Roosters to do in round 25 was rest everybody they possibly could? And if there was any team that needed a rest, it would be the Roosters. I'm not saying I know more than Trent Robinson, and I know that he would make the right decision for his team, but I questioned it at the time. And I do think teams that took the opportunity to rest players did better in these finals. Even the Eels, they pushed Penrith to the brink last night, and maybe that has something to do with it, even if it's just a 2 or 3% edge from the fact that none of the Eels starters played in round 25 while the Panthers starters did. So it remains to be seen what Penrith's got left in the tank. I'm going to reserve judgment, obviously, for Wednesday when I do my preview. So I'm not going to shed too much light on what I'm thinking for the prelims just yet. And I don't think it's fair for me to say, give a partial handicap when I haven't done my full deep dive. So I'll decompress, but I'll also see who's available on Tuesday night, and then obviously come back on Wednesday for a prelim preview. But I should say, some bookies actually opened that Penrith Storm line at -5.5, which I said even on Wednesday would feel light. And that was when I thought the Panthers would win comfortably, let alone the Panthers only won by 2 in the most brutal match in recent memory. So for that line to open -5.5, it was quickly smashed up to -6.5. Now currently the Storm are -7.5. And I wouldn't be shocked if by the time I talk to you again on Wednesday, that line is above 8. As for the South Sydney Manly game, as expected, Manly are slight underdogs. So it's expected to be pretty close. Manly looked pretty red hot, but just by virtue of that week off, Souths remain favourite. I think it opened -2.5 South Sydney, but it's slightly crept in. Looking across the board, South Sydney's a -1.5 favourite in most spots. That was really everything I had for these games, guys. One other point I want to make, if you're an NFL fan, Week 2 kicks off tomorrow morning, or we had one game a couple of days ago, but the big slate tomorrow morning. We've got NFL previews and tips Saturdays and Sunday. Prop me up. Had over about 20 NFL player props shared by Maddie the Undertaker and Barney on the Tripod Facebook page exclusively. And today, Nettie Given Sunday. Nettie went, I hope I get this right, 19-9. Someone comment and correct me if that's not right, but something like 67% on his bets for the NFL last week. And Nettie's show will be at 4:30 this afternoon. If you're an NFL fan, because I'm not tipping NFL, I'm kind of like Penrith right now. I'm just trying to squeeze every little bit of juice I've got left in my body to get me through the NRL season. But for us to be over 60% best bets, profit now above $3,000, and mixed matchups 68%, which is crazy. Yep, there you go. Matty O'Keefe said Nettie went 18-9 last week. It's been an awesome year. I'll be back Wednesday to preview the prelims. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Gamble responsibly as always, and Lego.